So, my last video was primarily about game design, with some talk about story also thrown in there, and while I do primarily plan to talk about those things in the future, there are a couple other aspects I'd like to talk about. In this case, a meta-analysis of culture and philosophy. Today's topics include the validity of art, effects of culture, and the hidden art of Bennett Foddy. Real talk, this video is going to be fucking super meta, and it's going to talk about some kind of deep shit, so if you just want to hear me be a contrarian and hate things you like, then I'd advise you go somewhere else. But if you're into the idea about some deeper conversations around games, then gather round the campfire, comrade. It's time. Part 1. Preface. So first, what you all are probably thinking. Isn't Bennett Foddy just like a dumb meme? If you hold this opinion, then please stop watching Let's Plays. I know they may be fun or whatever, but I think that they have a very seriously negative effect on the way games are perceived. Many people have acknowledged that the reasons that extreme content is seen the most is because it's, well, extreme. The news article about the opinions of Gary, who lives down the road, gets about as many views as I get women. But the article about, say, the beliefs of the last school shooter or the comments made by the president are like a black hole to our collective mice. Due to this capitalistic evolution and natural selection, anyone who wants to make content about niche things with little outside pull is going to get slam dunked into bankruptcy faster than you can say that flair has no friend. And this principle applies 1000% to Let's Players. Tell me, what would you rather watch? Plug and play critique? Or my money is on the latter. Now, if you've only seen those videos, you may conclude that Plug and Play is just some dumb gimmick that has no real value. But oh, you'd be wrong. Plug and Play is one of my favourite weird indie games to show to friends. There are clear metaphors with neat perspectives on human relations, and it manages to pull off its comedy in a way that most games just aren't smart enough to do. And if you're listening to this, then you can probably realise how I'm going to relate this back to getting over it. Or, well, got, as I'll be calling it. This is something I'd like to call the Let's Play effect, where memes, humour, and let's not mix words here. Harmful clickbait ruin public perception as gaming's validity as art. If you don't care about this, then good for you, that's your opinion. Just don't come crying to me when people denigrate esports as lesser than traditional ones. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that these people have a responsibility to their audience, just that if you want to have any sort of deeper conversation around games, it's probably best to avoid them. Oh, and by the way, if you think that this game was designed to be done, the guy literally has a fucking degree in philosophy. Anyway, regardless, I've complained about why you might have an aversion to my statement, so I think it's high time I just went forward and made the argument. So, Part 2. Shear design. So let's back ourselves up a bit here, and talk about the design. This shit's make or break. You can have all the messages you want, but if you're telling your themes through gameplay, you gotta have your bases covered, and Foddy does this to a T. It does this thing I really like, where a game's mechanics are a means, not just the ends itself. As in, if you want to pull off a combo in Street Fighter or fly in Overwatch, you just input the command. But with Foddy, there is no jump button. You're left to your own devices and made to figure it out. Not in a Minecraft I'll look at the wiki kind of way, but just feeling the controls until you have it. It's kind of like Team Fortress or Smash Bros. Melee in that regard. I'm playing it up, but it's important to acknowledge just how right Foddy got it. It's like a perfect balance. Just think, if this game was Quap or Meat Boy, the feeling would be very different. The sub-themes often push improvement out of the way for just sheer perseverance, so it couldn't be too intuitive. On the other hand, it couldn't have been too obnoxious either. There needed to be at least something here. So what's the result? A game that functionally felt like Quap, while still being skill-based enough to have an active speedrun community that finished the game and... yeah, what the fuck? Got is fair. And this idea is very important. The story couldn't have taken place in a game like Unfair Mario, meaning as much as you want to deny it, every death is your fault. Part 3. Unraveling the themes. So Bennett Foddy is about a few things, with its main themes being failure and perseverance. And as gaming's still in its weird meta phase, this is yet another game about a game. And while I am starting to get kinda tired of this, a lot of them have been really good. Yes, including GOT. It strikes some of the same notes as the Beginner's Guide, which is also a metatextual nightmare of shit. But whereas the Beginner's Guide was more about unhealthy relationships with art and whether we're ever truly free to judge it, God asks a much more simple question. One so simple that I guess David Reedon's 1000 IQ brain just saw right through it. What if you can't even finish the game? Are you free to critique it then? I mean, Reedon kind of addresses this, but it's more through the game's other themes of artistic intent and human boundaries, whereas Foddy just goes ahead and addresses it directly. In fact, I'd be willing to say that that one theme is what Bennett Foddy is about. Actually, wait. There is a very legit argument to say that the main theme is actually like perseverance or something. Or from that, frustration. So let's at least tackle the theme of frustration. Thrustration. Ha, I frustrated your mum if you know what I'm... So let's tackle the theme of frustration from the ground up. This one's pretty easy. The rest of this part of the script could theoretically just be a Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V, straight from the man himself. Foddy doesn't think of frustration as necessarily bad. Quote, I think to better appreciate the feeling of frustration and the things we can do with that feeling, it might be useful to talk about the different tastes it can have. Not all frustrations are alike. They taste different. Some flavours are overused and some are only used by accident. That was from his article entitled 11 Flavours of Frustration, parentheses number 7 will shock you. And from what I can tell, GOT utilises, nearly there, start over and there and back again, we've been here before, and others can get there but I can't. I mean, it's blindingly obvious to me that the theme of frustration is used. I mean, just look at any Let's Plays.
Or don't.
And you'll see just how much this is in effect. However, we could argue that the perseverance theme is shown through any game that's hard, and just because he addresses it doesn't necessarily mean it's the main theme, just the most recognisable one. In order to attack his main theme, he wanted the player to reconsider even playing the game in general, and to do that, he needed to address failure. So when the theme of failure is discussed, we can't just view it in a vacuum. We need to take into account what the ends are here. So here's what we should be asking. What is Foddy trying to say by representing this theme? Most likely the previously stated ideas on art. Just as
Ceci n'est pas une pipe
uses beige, the main theme of the work as a whole isn't beige, but that of deception and irony. In order to get a better analysis of games as a whole, we need to get better at looking past the narrative and ludonarrative to see what the piece is actually saying.
Ceci n'est pas une pipe
Uses beige to tell its themes. Bennett Foddy uses themes to tell its themes. So now that I've confused the fuck out of you, allow me to bring you back with some relaxing music. I tried. Part 4. What the bloody hell is the point? Like I said, in my opinion the main theme of GOT is the question, when are we truly able to judge games? Most media doesn't have this issue. A movie will never stop you halfway through and ask you to do a game of DDR to finish. You don't need to strum along to YouTube videos, and a book will never stop you halfway through and force you to write a 12-page essay on its themes to prove you're worthy of reading it. Ha! And thank God! However, games are different. Out of all the movies I've seen, I've only ever not finished 2 of them. It's much different with games. In a world where players are expecting 7+ hours of mainline content and developers are more interested in making these long-term live services than actually compelling stories, it's hard to expect people to finish every game they own. And to be honest, that's probably not a problem. Unless we want gaming to be art. Critique is very common in the industry. Every outlet scrambles to get their review out first. And whenever it's prevented, or potentially prevented, then gamers go insane. Like I said near the beginning, because of capitalism, outlets need to get the most clickable content out there. However, if they all have the same content, a review of the same game, then a different game is fought. It's a game of speed. When there's only one thing you can call the review, Assassin's Creed Review, then the only factor in your success is just not having competition. This leads to a practice that many people have spoken out about before. Due to the nature of this sheer grind, most game reviewers aren't able to put in the effort that they may want to. This is an issue core to the industry. And notice that I said industry and not medium. It is more than possible for games to be set up just like films, well-paced 1 to 2.5 hour experiences like The Beginner's Guide or Edith Finch. And When the Darkness Comes as well, which is a game I played recently that was fucking fantastic. And given the type of guy Foddy is, I'm guessing he's more for the latter rather than the former. Like it or not, obsession with content and larger games, while fine in its own right, does way more harm to good when it comes to games as an art form. Again, you might not care about this. It could be your opinion that games should do nothing but maximize content and value. So just don't come crying to me when people take your favourite YouTubers less seriously. This controversy about game critics not being able to properly judge games was actually made only days earlier from GOT's release, from the fallout of Cuphead. For that game, it was argued that because of the game's difficulty, its value could be lost for some customers, which is an interesting discussion. Should games require an easy mode? Do you need skill to critique games? When is it acceptable to quit and still say you've played it? These were all interesting questions. However, instead of talking about them, let's just say that the reaction to the lack of skill coming out of Dean Takahashi speaks 1,000 words to me. Before we go any further, I'd just like to point out that I'm critically talking about 2 games I haven't finished's effects on discourse on whether or not we can talk about games that we haven't finished. Part 5. Final wrap-up. Getting over it with Bennett Foddy is fair. It sets up its mechanics and forces you alone to work them out. The game isn't exploitable, and every loss is felt. It's a game that actively discourages you from playing it, and in doing so shows us some uncomfortable truths about the industry. It brings into question some important questions. When are we free to judge games? I'm not personally sure, and I don't think we'll ever be, to be honest. And that's why I'm making this video, because these conversations need to be had. And given that the type of people who would ignore these connotations just to be angry probably aren't the type of people who would click on this video in the first place, the comment section should remain relatively civil. So let's talk. Let's talk about games, let's talk about art, let's talk about why getting over it with Bennett Foddy is art. Hello everybody, welcome to the end screen. I'm going to keep this short so you fuckers actually watch it. Thing numero uno is the Twitch TV. It is a website that exists. I happen to be on it. Go to twitch.tv/captain_flair_tf2. The thing will be on screen. Now, I don't know why I'm being so energetic. So the second thing that I would like to tell you about is that I had some help with the thumbnail for this video. It was Hollow Effect that made it for me. We'll have behind the scenes because it was actually quite a funny process, and we'll be doing that. So yeah, like and subscribe everybody, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, smash the comment section, smash the government.